All right, we are live. It is 7 p.m. on Wednesday, May 1st. It's going to be May. The weather is amazing here in Asheville. Tomorrow's going to be even better. I think we're going to have rain on the weekend, but that is fine. We'll take it. And just want to say hi to everyone, whoever is joining us tonight. If you want to put in the comments where you're joining from, whether it's different state, different country, different part of town, neighborhood, whatever you want to put, just say hi and say where you're joining from. And today I wanted to talk to you about educational landscape in Asheville, North Carolina. And I'm not going to talk about it by myself because I'm not an expert in education, as you might guess. But I am a good connector and I can be a source of the source, and that is my goal outside of my scope of practice. And so today I am having a guest, Sarah Jean Smith, with me, who is a local expert in all things education and schools in Asheville, Buncombe County as a whole. I met Sarah Jean, I think it was about a month ago, when our local association of realtors invited her to educate us as realtors on, and that's exactly what it's called. The class was called, or lunch and learn was called, educational landscape of Asheville, I think. And they did it so that we can update on anything that we didn't know about education in the Asheville area. But I honestly do not know if I was listening to Sarah Jean as a realtor or as a parent, because I have two kids. I have a 4-year-old and an 8-year-old, and all this stuff. Although I do have a video about how schools work from a few years ago, I felt like few things didn't get into my video back then, and then there were some updates. And either way, Sarah Jean's presentation was, I felt, was way better than mine. And so I invited her to come to this live today and talk about what it's like to have to go to school in Asheville, North Carolina, in Buncombe County, what options we have, and all that good stuff, and how schools work, because it might be different from wherever you are, from wherever you're moving, or you might just not even realize how schools work here because you haven't done school in a while and you have kids, smaller kids who are of preschool age. In any case, I think it's going to be useful information for a lot of people. So, Sarah Jean, thank you so much for joining. I think you okay. You're unmuted. I'll let you introduce yourself and tell everyone, your background and who you are and what you do. I know we just talked about dogs. It's okay. It's life, real
Your
life.
dogs are barking right away. Hi, all. I'm Sarah Jean Smith. I'm going to put the dogs in real quick. Hang on. I'll be right back.
That's fine. Real life interferes. Again, if you just join in, put in the comments where you're joining from and say hi. And as you join in, bring your questions, take notes, bring your questions, but this will be recorded, and of course it will live on my channel, so you can always come back and rewatch this video. It is also going to live in Living in Nashville podcast that I have going. It's basically same the videos, but in a podcast form. All right,
All right. Back on.
back in
Hi.
business.
I'm Sarah Jean Smith. I have two dogs. They're very loud. I live in Asheville, North Carolina. I'm a school consultant and a program consultant. I travel around the country and around Asheville, helping schools, looking at their programs, helping leaders, training principals, training superintendents, training mentors, working with teachers, all kinds of fun stuff in schools. I used to be the high school principal of the Franklin School of Innovation, which is a public charter here in Asheville. We were 6th through 12th grade.
Mm-hmm.
Before that, I was a high school teacher for 11 years here and in New Orleans. And before that, I started teaching a long time ago, 20 years ago, in South America. So I've been all over, and yeah, I love helping people figure out education, figure out what's best for their family. Some things I do here, I get to know schools and I get to know programs and I get to know districts so that I can help families figure out where they want their kid to end up in school. And just getting to know that decision, that conversation, that whole process is so personal to each family. So, usually I'm not part of the decision. I'm just part of the information gathering. We go, we look, we ask the big questions. And yeah, hopefully I can be of service and help a family figure out their educational best place. And I think the number one first step to that is understanding the landscape, understanding what's going on in our schools and what it means to be an independent school, a charter school, what kind of preschools we have, what's the difference between Asheville City schools and Buncombe County schools. So all those things we're going to get into tonight. Oh yeah, there's me. And that's what I do, and that's where I'm coming from. We're going to start with you just kind of dwelling on something. Think way back to your childhood when you were going into school, when your families were trying to choose your school. How did your families choose your school? Was it just, this is where we live and we're just going to go to this school? Or was it, my kid's really into making robots, he's going to go to a science school? What was the thought process for your family? And then how did that whole process form your perspective of education? Knowing what schools were like in your hometown, knowing where your friends went, knowing what your neighborhood school was, all of this is going to come together to make your perspective and perception of education. So kind of think back. And if you went to school 10 or more years ago, lots has changed, or at least in Asheville, lots has changed. So we used to have this really set model where you lived in an area, you chose your house based on the schools. It was very tightly combined. Now we have things that are changing and are different. So keeping that in mind, we're going to see how things have changed. And I really want our session for today to be driven by your needs and curiosities. So if you have something that comes up for you, there's going to be a time at the end for questions, and you can jump in whenever. Asking questions, putting comments in. And if I don't see your questions, just Elena can just jump in too and ask your questions. This is all for you. This is all for you to feel like you know what's going on in Asheville's schools. So just let me know. And we'll go through the whole thing. And at the end, there'll be time for questions. But if you have a burning thing that you have to bring up, that's great too. All right, let's dive in.
All right.
So we started with a connector, kind of connecting your experience to what we're going to learn. We're going to look at the educational landscape of Asheville. We're going to look at traditional public schools, and we're going to look at charter and independent schools. And we're not going to stop there. We're going to talk about if you have special needs, if your kids need testing, if they need IEPs or 504s. We're going to look at therapeutic boarding schools. Asheville is actually a hub for therapeutic boarding schools and wilderness therapy programs. So those are other kind of special needs for families. And then we're going to kind of talk about the intersection of real estate and schooling. How does it all come together here? And how could it influence your choice of where you might want to live in Asheville if you're looking to move, to relocate? All right. This interestingly colored map is Buncombe County schools. All of the districts of Buncombe County schools have feeder schools that go into them. They're zoned by the high school. So North Buncombe High School is up north, obviously, that yellow part. And then over to the northwest is Irwin. And then Enka is orange, Enka High School and all its feeder schools, Robertson, Reynolds, and Owen. And then that little pink sliver on the inside, that's Asheville City Schools. So as you can see, Asheville City Schools is pretty small geographically, but it has a lot of kids.
And I also wanted to mention that it might be confusing for some. Asheville City Schools map or boundaries is very different from Asheville city limits.
That's true.
So just because you live or might live in Asheville city limits does not mean that you will belong to Asheville City Schools. Like, for example, we live in city limits, but we do not belong to Asheville City Schools. So it's a different map. It's weird, but
same. I live in the Robertson School District, and you can see like Robertson's, it snugs right up, like it's right next to Asheville City Schools. And it's not a whole lot of geographical area that actually is in Asheville City Schools.
Mhm.
And then you'll see there's 2 high schools, ℍ𝕀𝕳 Academy and Early College. ℍ𝕀𝕳 Academy is a magnet school that you apply to, and it's pretty hard to get into. And it's a STEM school that's right at the Buncombe County Schools central office. It's 9 through 12. It was rated one of the top schools, public schools in all of North Carolina.
Hmm.
I think it was number 1 for STEM. And then
Wow.
there's Early College, where you can get a lot of credits. So at Early College, if you have above a certain GPA, you simultaneously take a lot of courses with AB Tech, and you can get your college courses done early. Now at any public school, if you by junior year, if you have over a 2.8 GPA, you can just do dual enrollment with our local community colleges for free. As long as you're a junior or a senior, you can do free community college courses. So that's pretty cool.
That's awesome.
Sometimes I wonder if it's a good idea to rush through your college courses, because college is fun, but if that's something you want to do for free, I totally get it. You will see up on top of this slide, it says DARA. That's discretionary release forms. So if you, for example, you're in the Irwin district and you really want to go to a different school, you have to get released from your school by that principal, and then you have to apply to get into another school, and that principal has to talk to the principal of where you're supposed to be going or already have been going, and then you can kind of switch and trade. There's a cap on it. Only a certain number of people can do it. It's not super common. They try to do it for athletes sometimes, so they're a little bit cautious of who they take and who they don't. But all that to say, and you're going to see throughout this whole presentation, that whatever your area school is, your neighborhood school is, you don't necessarily have to go to that school if you think some other school would be a better fit. It's kind of the underlying theme. So then for all of these districts, like let's take Robertson, for example. Robertson is the high school, and then you have middle schools, and we'll go through some of these places as well. But you have Robertson, you have Valley Springs Middle, and you also have Kuntz, which is an intermediate school. We have 5th and 6th separate, and then 7th and 8th at Valley Springs, which is kind of a cool idea. And then you have Estes and Glen Arden. So you have all the feeder schools that go into your high school, just like anywhere else. Each district, each of those colored areas in Asheville and Buncombe County has a dual language program. Some of them have elementary, some of them have intermediate, and some of them have middle. So here are the ones that are in each district. So wherever you live, you can apply to these as magnet schools. They're just a one-page little form that you express your interest that you want to do a Spanish dual language program. Unfortunately, Spanish is the only dual language program at this time. And so K through 5, they're with the same group of kids, and they have a native speaker from a different country that comes and teaches them Spanish. And they start off right away just speaking all in Spanish. And then there was a little bit of feedback that, okay, they got to 5th grade, and then they have to go into Spanish 1 in middle school. So they added some intermediates, and now they're going to add some middle schools as well. So kids eventually in Buncombe County will be able to go all the way through 8th grade in Spanish, speaking a little bit of English and lots of Spanish. You're with the same little core group of kids all the way. So you like make this little cadre cohort group of people that your kid gets to know really well. And it's really cool to go into these classrooms and you have like six-year-olds just doing math in Spanish and comparing their answers. And it's really cool.
So they do classes in Spanish? Like other classes, not just Spanish class?
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Oh, it's all in Spanish. Yeah. They're doing math, they're doing literature, they're doing social studies, all in Spanish.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's great. Cool. It's really good for a kid's brain too. And so then there's Asheville City Schools. Here's that little sliver in the middle we were talking about. Every Asheville City School elementary school acts as a magnet program. And so what that looks like is you go on the website and you pay a nominal fee and you look at the 5 different schools. One is focused on arts, one is focused on global issues, one's experiential learning, one is science, technology, engineering, and math, and another one's ecology. And then you can rate them. Even if you're not in the city school district, even if you're just in Buncombe County, you can pick your top 2 or 3 that you want to go to, and they'll let you know if there's room to go there, and they give you your choices. And then all of the Asheville City elementary schools now are going to feed into the Asheville Middle School because Montford North Star closed. So all these elementary schools go to the middle school, and then all of those goes to Asheville High School. Asheville High is this amazing old building. Looks like Hogwarts, and it has Asheville High, this big high school in the main part, and then you have the School of Inquiry and Life Sciences on the top of Asheville High School, and that's more like a magnet high school. We have to apply and get in, and it's a smaller kind of cohort cadre of kids. It's a really cool program. It's hard to get into as well. It's a really big deal when your kid gets into SILSA. So beyond all those public schools, we have a bunch of public charters. The way a public charter works is people that want to start a special school or an organization that wants to branch out and have a school here puts in a charter application to the state of North Carolina. And they can be approved for 3 years, 5 years, whatever the state decides. And they still have to do state testing. They still have to follow the standards. They still have to do everything. They actually get less money than a public school. They don't get money for buses or their cafeteria program and a few other things. So they're operating on a smaller budget. So they'll do a lot of fundraising and special events. And we have a ton of charter schools in our area.
Mhm.
So this is just, this list will probably need to be added to by next year because it's just always growing. So you have
Mhm.
Fernleaf, which is way in South Asheville. It's like Fletcher, Henderson County, like gets down here. It's an amazing outdoor school. The Fletcher Park has given them like 2 acres of land to do outdoor experimental, amazing education. And they just added the high school 2 years ago, I think.
Mhm.
And then Franklin School of Innovation is FSI. We start at 5th and go to 12th, and we're an experiential learning school, EL education. So EL education is a nationwide charter network that focuses on racial equity, students being leaders of their own learning, agency, getting kids to be leaders in their community. It's a pretty cool model. IC Imagine is K through 12. It's over in like Candler, West Asheville, next to FSI. Evergreen is in East Asheville. They used to be an EL education school. They sort of are still very focused on outdoors and big expeditions. Art Space, K8 is in Swannanoa. They focus on art, obviously. So even in like kindergarten through 5th grade, elementary kids get 5 different kinds of art every week. So they're doing like music with a recording studio. They're doing clay and pottery with a kiln, and they're doing painting and they're doing singing. So it's like very art centered. Oh, and then all the other teachers kind of collaborate to do art in their core classes. So like math through art, social studies
Mhm.
through art, very art focused. Mountain City Public Montessori just opened last year. I think they're K7 now. They'll be K8 soon. Montessori is amazing. You probably know about the Montessori model, but to have it in the elementary schools and all the way up through middle school is pretty rare. And when I went to visit, I was just blown away by the fact that teachers weren't talking at all. All the kids were just working on their own, and the teachers were just sitting in the corner taking notes. It was just totally student centered and student driven, which was amazing.
Where is it located again?
Oh yeah, Mountain City Public is right downtown on Church Street in an old church. So like Wicked Brew Pub, a block and a half.
Mhm. Okay.
And then Peak Academy, also amazing. Peak Academy's charter, the point of their charter was to close the achievement gap. So in Asheville City and Buncombe County, there's a big achievement gap, or you could say a racial opportunity gap between white and BIPOC students. And so Peak Academy's whole focus is to close the achievement gap. And last year, every single one of their kids showed academic growth, which is unheard of. I think they're probably the only school in the state to do that.
Wow.
So they're in West Asheville, kind of across Haywood Road from Rainbow.
Mhm.
And I'm probably forgetting one because there are so many charter schools in our area, but that's what we got right now. So how do you get into a charter school? It's an interesting process. I have a kindergartner. He's hopefully going to art space. We just went through this whole thing. It's crazy. So first you go on the website and you check out all the lotteries, all the charter schools, and you sign up for something called Lotteries or Schoolmint. Get your name in there. You get all your information between January 1st and April 1st. And then around mid-April, they run the lottery. It used to be like an actual machine where they pull a ball out. And now it's just like they push a button on a computer. They get a list of the kids that actually got a spot. And then everyone else is on the wait list. And
Mhm.
so it's really dependent on how big the school is. Like ICI, Invest Collegiate and Imagine, that charter school is really big. So the wait list moves quickly. And you might be number 50, but there's also 100 kids that there are spots for them. So then everyone finds out in mid-April, okay, you're number 50 at Evergreen. You didn't get a spot. We'll let you know. And then as you go through April, May, June, July, you're like, okay, I'm number 25. Ooh, I'm number 12. Ooh, I'm number 5. And then when school finally starts, you'll know which ones you're into. Or if you get lucky, you just get a spot and you can sign up for it and you're good to go. But sometimes you don't know where you're going until the very end of the summer because
Wow.
everyone starts moving around. And a big shift that happens is some people say yes to multiple places. And then come August, everyone chooses their actual first choice and all these spots open up.
Okay.
So it's a bit crazy. And that might not be for you. You might, just want to go to a traditional school where you have a spot right away. Yeah, which I get. So
Yeah.
another thing about charter schools too is they're able to have more wiggle room than traditional schools as far as their teaching methodology, as far as making decisions there. Like they don't answer to the superintendent of a county. The executive director, the head of the charter school, they are the superintendent. So they make choices for the school that really benefit just that small community. So it feels more tailored to those families. And a lot of times it feels more like a small little family community. It feels like you're part of something smaller but more focused. So I think that's a great way to
And
go.
and if there are siblings in charter schools, they get automatically, correct?
So they get weighted at the top of the next one.
Okay.
So whatever spots there are, they get it. Unless there are a bunch of teachers. I think teachers' kids are first, then siblings and board members or something like that. But yeah, they're going to get in. Siblings almost, I think, always get in. It'd be a really weird year where every single teacher's kid needed to go to kindergarten or something like that. That'd be weird.
Yeah. Okay.
So if you're also thinking about private schools, we have a bunch of amazing private schools, also known as independent schools. I just put the logos of a few on here. There are way more than even just these. So we have a lot of private Montessori schools, some of which go into elementary schools. As you're looking at Montessori schools, just be really conscientious of their schedule. And they don't always say it online, but a lot of them are just half day. So that's hard if you can't pick your kid up at 12:30. We have a lot of schools that are K through 12 and they're unaffiliated. Like Carolina Day School, it's this amazing, beautiful school in South Asheville. They really focus on socio-emotional learning and social justice and the whole child approach. And they're not religious and they're not affiliated with any bigger thing. And yeah, they have this I think 18-acre land. So each grade gets their own backyard playground. There are a bunch of religious schools, of course. There are a lot of boarding schools. As we said, there's therapeutic boarding schools. Holistic schools, what I mean by that is Rainbow Community School or Odyssey that were started by people that wanted a different paradigm of education that really looks at spirituality, the whole child, holistic, kind of like holistic view of how to raise a happy human, and not as focused on academics. Therapeutic schools and outdoor schools like French Broad River Academy is a middle school where they're separated by boys and girls and they bring the kids out for like canoe trips and backpacking trips and it's like very outward bound. Yeah. And the link there, it's for school vouchers. We've always had a school voucher program, but you used to have to be at a certain level of income to be eligible for school vouchers starting next year. And this is going to change education entirely, I think. But that's another talk entirely. I think that the school vouchers for 24-25, anyone can get them. You can use, if you decide to go to an independent private school, you can use the money that the state would have put to your kid's education in a public school. You can use that money to go to a private school. If you make under, I think it's like 55K, you can use all of it. And then there are tiers everyone can use up to 60% of it, I think.
Wow.
So everyone gets some money from the state if they want to go to an independent school next year for their kindergartner and up.
Okay.
It's very interesting.
Can you share the link later so I can put it in the description? Yeah. So the link, all the relevant links will be in the description later. I'm going to update the description and you'll find them there.
Yeah. And obviously this is a kind of, here, I'll put it in the chat. It's people have very different feelings about it. but the money is there. So if you're thinking about an independent school, like definitely check it out, in my opinion.
Okay.
Preschools. So if you're moving here with a baby, Elena knows. So it's really hard to get into preschools in Asheville, and I bet it is in most cities, but we are a really quickly growing city, and a lot of us have young children, and it's just really hard to get into a good preschool. There are a bunch of Montessori schools. Again, check which one of these. Some of them don't even say on their website that they only go till noon. A lot of these only go till noon. There's outdoor preschools where everyone's outside all the time. Like there's a forest school for kids under 5, and they just spend every day, no matter what, outside. The JCC, the Jewish Community Center, has a really big preschool program. There are a bunch of churches that have preschool programs. The Spanish Academy of Asheville is an immersion program for littles from 3 to 5. Asheville Academy in South Asheville. Childcare networks all over town. Definitely check the reviews before going to one. A big thing here is nanny shares. I'm sure y'all are familiar with those, but either getting on a Facebook group or looking at care.com or something, a lot of people just do nanny shares because it really is hard to get into preschools here.
Do you know why that is?
I have a lot of theories. One big thing is it's really hard to find good preschool teachers and keep good preschool teachers.
Yeah. I from my personal experience, my son started out at our neighbors, actually next door. It was super convenient. I mean, we
That's
he woke
awesome.
up 10 minutes till 8, and then we just walk across the street and he's at the daycare, and it was licensed. She had 20 years of experience in early education, and then she opened up her own place at her house where she could legally only have up to 5 kids or something like that. I mean, she had like everything was legal and licensed, and she had inspectors come in and check on like even like what kind of shrubs she has in her backyard where kids are and stuff like that. It was, and then she made a decision to shut it down. Luckily for us, it was right at the time when he needed to transition to the next phase. But she made a decision to shut it down because she said, and that's what she said, that a lot of other people like her were closing their places because they start implementing more rules, more regulations, a lot of things that just kind of were a lot of bureaucracy, a lot of stuff that it was just crazy. It was just getting out of hand for one person who had a small business out of her house to do all those things to be compliant and to keep her license. So it was just not worth it for her. And she said that a lot of other people like her, because she was in this circle, in this community, did the same thing because they were just done with it. They were suffocating people who did it independently, legally, but so I don't know. That's another perspective.
It's a good perspective. That would definitely make a bottleneck of people that all needed to suddenly get into the preschools.
Yes.
Because when we had, my son's about to turn 5, and when we were pregnant, I got him on a bunch of wait lists. And then when he was like 3 or 4, they would call and be like, "Hey, we got a spot open in the 1 to 2-year-old room." Like, I got on your wait list 3.5 years ago. I don't have a 1-year-old anymore.
Yeah.
So it is hard. It is hard to find a place.
Yeah.
And it really depends on what you're looking for too. There's a lot of half-day programs that have openings, and there's a lot in churches that don't do much academic work, and it's more of like just watching your kid. So like it depends on what level of preschool or childcare you want.
Right.
Way opposite end of the spectrum, as you guys all probably know, we have a bunch of continuing education post-secondary opportunities here. University of North Carolina, Asheville is right here in North Asheville. I even have a master's program there. We have AB Tech, which has a ton of vocational programs like brewing and cooking and early childhood education and all kinds of great stuff. Lenore-Ryan has a campus here. WCU has an extension campus here. There's stuff like Taoist traditions where, like, if you want to be an acupuncturist, there's massage schools. Warren Wilson's in East Asheville, Sonoma. Montreat College is near Black Mountain. So we have so many colleges and universities, and this might not even be for your kids. Maybe you want to go back and learn something. There's all kinds of options here. So big takeaways from that part that I hope you're seeing is that it's really a good idea here to get to know what your kid would most thrive in, what would be best for him. And I'll talk about if your kid has special needs next, but really thinking about, you have choice. You have choice in Asheville of where you want your kid to go. And then if you need to reach out to me, I can help you. I can help guide you through those choices and what do they really mean and what would it look like for me to try to get my kid to go here.
Mhm.
And a big thing I've been telling everyone is, like, you can look at all the data. I have a whole document with links, and you can look at all the different data that all the different schools put out. But to really get a feel for a school, you kind of have to go on a tour or talk to someone that worked there or talk to someone
Mhm.
that's been there. It's really important to get the human perspective and not just the data perspective, because education is a very humanistic pursuit.
Right. And that goes back to the fact that, a lot of people ask me, for example, too, and which I can't even talk about schools in terms of how bad or good certain schools are because we're not allowed to as realtors. But school ratings, right? All those websites, niche.com and some other ones, um, they may not necessarily present the full picture. And it's best to tour the school, get other people's opinions. And what I do, because I'm not allowed to talk about school ratings and kind of steer people. I tell people, go on Facebook to moms groups and ask a question, or just find those questions, because of somebody always asks these questions about schools, certain schools. What do you think about this or that? And just read comments, and you'll know everything you need to know. And surprisingly, what I hear and what I read in these comments is that, some schools that are considered not so great, and they have lower ratings, I read some great comments. People love them. So it's all about personal experience. And yeah, but so it's best to tour the school, get connected with somebody who actually has experience with the school, bad or good or bad. And then, also read reviews, because and sometimes what I heard also is that, and I think it's true for any business, not just schools, is that people read or write reviews, which some of those scores are based on reviews, right? Parents reviews. um they don't necessarily write reviews when everything is okay. Either people are happy about everything and they just, they want to write something great, or they mad about something. They live in the school, they transfer and they move in and never again, and that's when they like write nasty review. And that's what you get. So you don't really get like that mid cut of, what does it actually look like. So
I concur. And something else to take into account with all the school data is that it's showing you achievement data, test scores, where kids are at the end of their high school, AP classes they take, colleges they get into. Did those kids achieve? And if you get a group of kids that are already really high achievers coming in and you do barely anything, they might still be achievers. If you get kids that came in with very little foundational skills, with a difficult family background, all these things, and you push them up to an amazing level from where they started, you might not be at the level of the high achieving school, but you've shown growth and you've done great things. So just keeping in mind, is this school promoting growth? Is this school kind of a place where kids belong and they're growing? Or is it a place where everyone's coming in at a high achievement level and they're kind of staying there? So there's just a lot. Data only tells one story, of course. So if your family, if your kids, if your students have special needs, there are a lot of things to take into account in our county. So we have a bunch of testing facilities if you think you need to get your kid an IEP or a 504. An IEP is an individualized education plan. So that would, and 504 is another way to get accommodations for your kid. 504s are thought of as accommodations that are a little less intense, I guess, than IEPs. But just for example, if your student needs extra time on a test, if your student needs a different way to express their answers, if they need a little bit less work in these situations. So if your kid needs an individualized education plan, there are a bunch of testing facilities that can help you with that. We do have specialized schools here, like Black Mountain Academy is a school for kids that are on the autism spectrum. Just that's the work it does. Also, charter schools have a higher number in general of kids with IEPs and 504s. For example, Franklin School of Innovation we had something like 32%, 33% of our kids had IEPs and 504s, where 12 to 13% in traditional schools would have IEPs and 504s, because it's a smaller community. We're known for helping families in that way. And we would have one EC person, exceptional children person, at every grade level. And there's just a lot of wraparound services. So check out the charter school's response when you go, ask those questions on your tour, and you can tell if they know what they're doing and if they know how to help your kid. And really get familiar with the language in the IEP or the 504 so that you know which accommodations can be put in place for your child based on whatever the testing facility has deemed necessary and found with their testing.
Mm-hmm.
Asheville, there's like 2 hubs in the country for therapeutic boarding schools, around here and then out in Utah. So wilderness therapy programs are there to help kids that are having pretty severe either mental health or addiction issues. First, a lot of times the kids get taken out to a wilderness program where they're like camping, hiking, out in the woods, cooking their own food over fire. And it hopefully gets them away from the things that are pulling them into the addiction or downward spiral there for their mental health. And then once they're done with those, and then once they're done with those programs, they then go to a therapeutic boarding school. And it could be 6 months, a year. I listed a few. There are many more. Black Mountain Academy, as I said, is a therapeutic boarding school for kids with ASD, autism spectrum disorder. Wolf Creek Academy, I believe, is for girls. Lake House Academy, I know, is for girls. It's over by Saluda. So there's different networks around the country, and we just happen to have a lot here. It's a beautiful place to be in therapy and hike and hang out.
Yes, we have an abundance of hiking spots and trails and all that. So and the climate too.
Yeah,
very mild.
It's temperate enough to do this year round. Like you can go camping in December. You'll be okay. So, as we were talking about a bit, we can't say, oh, this school's bad and this school's good. But I think just getting to know what you're hoping for with your family. And then there's other big questions like, do you want to wait in car rider line for 40 minutes a day? I can tell you which schools have crazy car rider lines. Like, do you want to be far away from where you're living? Do you want to go through traffic to get your kid? Do you want to have a bus option? Like, so many different things that go into these conversations and this decision-making process. Neither of us would ever be like, oh, your kid should go here. Like, we don't know your kid that well. And
right.
There's just no way. But giving you all the information is something that we can help with. And so, yeah, reach out to me if you have any questions.
So Sarah Jean's contact information is down in the description of this video. I know we covered a lot, and not all the information might just kind of, you need time to sit with it, but also it might still be confusing, especially if you come in from a different area. So reach out to Sarah Jean, and she'll be happy to guide you through the process and how to navigate the system, and go more in detail based on your and your family needs, and especially your and your kids' needs. Because these days, like she said, we do have options. It's not just where you live is where you go to school. Even here locally in certain locations, we have many different choices between public schools, private schools, charter schools. You don't have to even move to a different part of town to be able to go to or have those choices. So if it's still confusing, again, Sarah Jean's information and contact information is down in the description of the video if you're watching on replay, or if you're listening this on the podcast, her contact information is going to be down in the description as well. And if anybody has any questions, put them in the comments now, or if you're watching on replay, put them in the comments, and I will be happy to connect you with Sarah Jean and have your questions answered. And I have my little helper, my 4-year-old.
Do you have any
crash the party? She goes to Discovery Montessori, and
nice.
we were actually super lucky when we transferred from one place to this new place. It took us 2 weeks. We were never on any wait lists. It was a miracle. I call it Asheville miracle. We were they had a spot, and we got transferred in 2 weeks. So it was amazing. I know we were very lucky. I consider ourselves lucky. All right. So if nobody has any questions, we will wrap this up and let everyone go back to dinner and evening routine. Appreciate your time and expertise. And anybody, I'm now gonna have a contact for anybody who has any questions and need help navigating this educational landscape here in Asheville, North Carolina.
Thank you all. Have a good night.
Thank you. You too.